From Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm Alliance President Reverend Paul Rauschenbusch, broadcasting this week from Washington, D.C. It's Thanksgiving weekend. As troubled as this time is for so many, there is always something to be grateful for, and making sure to focus on that is a proven tactic for getting through difficulties, large and small. This year, one of the things I'm grateful for is the outpouring of support Interfaith Alliance was able to muster for the Respect for Marriage Act from among faith leaders and so many others across the nation. As part of our Senate Lobby Day earlier this month, we heard from a number of those faith leaders on why this piece of legislation is so important. On this week's show, you'll hear some of those stories. But first, I'll sit down and talk Thanksgiving with Rabbi Joshua Stanton, one of the foremost Jewish and interfaith leaders in America. You can hear State of Belief on the radio and get the podcast on Apple Podcasts and all the other podcast platforms. Every week, I will be in conversation with the most fascinating and impactful civic and religious leaders in the nation. You won't want to miss it. Please subscribe today. State of Belief Radio is made possible in great part by the generous support of our listeners. If you have made a donation, I really want to thank you. If you haven't pitched in yet, information on how you can help keep this show on the air is available at stateofbelief.com. And you can find out more about the work of Interfaith Alliance and join at interfaithalliance.org. And now to my first guest. Rabbi Joshua Stanton is the rabbi at East End Temple in Manhattan and senior fellow at Klal. He serves on the Board of Governors at the International Jewish Committee for Interreligious Consultation and has been named by the Coexist Forum as one of the foremost Jewish and interreligious bloggers in the world. Rabbi, happy Thanksgiving in the world. It's great to have you here with us. It's great to be
in conversation, and thank you for teaching me everything I know about blogging. My goodness.
Oh my God, I feel responsible. You know, you are so much more than a blogger, but that is your international fame is well deserved. Anyway, thank you for being here. You're really one of my the religious leaders I love and respect so much, and just, appreciating everything you're doing in this world. So let's dive right in. And I'm already talking about gratitude. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the way that you show up. I'm grateful for the way that your faith just oozes out of you, and at the same time, it brings you into spaces that aren't necessarily comfortable and familiar, but it invites you into adventure. And I just think that what you have offered me and American religion in these times is just so wonderful. So maybe you can start us off with a little bit of talk about the role of gratitude in Judaism. And maybe give us some perspectives on the way we could be thinking about Thanksgiving this year.
Absolutely. One of the things that I love the most is that in Jewish tradition, Thanksgiving is something that is seen to require preparation. You don't just walk into your Thanksgiving table and say, "I'm so thankful." And I think that many of us remember some of the more awkward conversations going around the table and being thankful. And those conversations tend to be filled with platitudes because it's not easy to come in, sit down, and overflow with gratitude. And in Jewish prayer, in the Amidah, which is one of the central prayers of our tradition, there are actually 3 different steps, the last of which is thanksgiving. The first is praise, recognizing the good, recognizing God, recognizing relationship, recognizing connection. The second is an acknowledgement of all that you still want and need in this world. They are a series of petitionary prayers in which you express that which isn't yet okay in your life. And finally, having expressed praise for that which is awe-inspiring, having expressed, given word to all that isn't yet awe-inspiring, finally, you conclude with thanksgiving, acknowledging that which is good, that which is important. And your final words in this prayer are a prayer for peace, the ultimate source of inspiration for feelings of thanksgiving. And so I just love that our tradition acknowledges Thanksgiving is not easy, it's not automatic. And what I would hope is that we take some time to do the inner work that gets us to a place of Thanksgiving, that it's not just an automatic Pavlovian response to the smell of turkey and gravy, but that we do the inner work to get to a place that we can feel it more deeply inside.
I think that's an amazing, that gratitude and Thanksgiving is a process and not just a destination. And I think I think one of the things that we're kind of slapped on the hand when we think about, oh, there's some areas of my life that are not great, and that are very like that I have so much sorrow or need or want or, broken relationships, feeling of scarcity of basic food and housing, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, if you just say, "Oh, well, just be grateful," that's not fair. It's really not fair, and it's not real. And so I think what you're like, what the Jewish kind of almost a pilgrimage of gratitude really allows for the recognition that this is an incredible world. Things are not perfect for me, and yet still. And I think that is beautiful. I wonder if in your life you have so many different relationships with both personal as well as other faith traditions, faith communities, other like things going on in the nation. I wonder where you look and see what's awesome, where you feel like things are still lacking or broken. And then what are you grateful for? So let's use that blueprint to really talk for you personally as a rabbi in America right now.
Where is there brokenness, and where am I feeling gratitude? And I think that this year in particular, the two fit together very closely. There has been such an upswing in antisemitism in ways that would have been unfathomable 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And the tropes being used, be it the replacement theory, which is straight out of a neo-Nazi handbook, to the very campaign slogan, America First, which was a neo-Nazi campaign slogan, to Dave Chappelle skits, which have long since stopped being funny, to Kanye West, who has long since stopped being talented, to Kyrie Irving, who speaks perhaps beyond his area of expertise in ways that are deeply hurtful, to the number of people who casually drop George Soros and conspiracy theories about Jews on a day-to-day basis. So what we're hearing and seeing and feeling is heartbreaking. And what gives me hope when I'm able to acknowledge all of the pain that a lot of Jews are feeling in the public square and in their day-to-day lives, I'm feeling really a lot of gratitude for the allies. And to name a few, in addition to the one with whom I'm speaking today, Paul, you have done so much to stand alongside the Jewish community. You feel a sense of kinship with the Jewish community for many reasons, but you walked the walk of your faith in making sure that your Jewish brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors are not targeted. The Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis has been standing up and speaking out brilliantly about the importance of solidarity with the Jewish community. It happens that Middle Collegiate Church actually meets at East End Temple right now for really tragic reasons that their building burnt down during the pandemic. But the beauty has been the set of relationships that have emerged between our community members and the sense of real solidarity and kindness and care.
I know. I'll just interject there that is one of the most beautiful stories of interreligious affiliation and sense of love that you welcome that congregation that is so important to the American, especially the New York religious landscape. Welcome them into your sanctuary, and it's extraordinary. So I don't want to gloss over that. What East End did and is doing with the heartbreak of Middle Church burning down, this historic church that was just a wonderful place led by the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis. And so I want to underline what a great example that is of collaboration and cooperation going forward.
Well, and it owes to the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis. The fact that she has been a friend of mine for years meant that this felt natural. This was not forced. This was not a PR stunt. This was a natural outgrowth of relationship and a natural outgrowth of her allyship. And what I particularly appreciate about her, she is a world-class theologian. She is, on many occasions, on the world stage. And yet, when we speak, she listens as well as anybody I know. And I feel really heard and really seen as a Jewish person. I hope that I'm similarly able to hold space for her as a Christian leader, as a leader of the Black community, as a leader in so many different spheres. But what a beautiful example of listening deeply and then speaking. And Middle Collegiate Church just put out a set of tweets that have gone viral about what Christians can and should do to combat anti-Semitism. The Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis and I actually have an op-ed coming out in the New York Daily News about allyship against anti-Semitism. And it's because she has been standing and doing this for years. So one of the things I'm grateful for is that the upswing feels recent, but the relationships are deep and enduring and will not bend in the face of this kind of hatred. And so, yes, there is a storm, and it feels like we've got oak trees that are standing tall and doing just fine.
That
so
is a beautiful image.
How blessed. When in world history have Jewish diasporas had allyship like this? Yes, there's anti-Semitism, and unfortunately, that's an old story, and it has resurged in ways that are heartbreaking. But I cannot think of a time in world history when we have had allies like this. And so I'm filled with gratitude.
That's an extraordinary perspective that I had not thought about. That like this, I'm glad you feel that. I know that, you can count me among that, not only because of my own Jewish background, but also just as a fellow human, as a Christian clergy, you know it's there. And the truth is that many of us will stand with you right there, not with a distance, but right there. And I think that's what you and Jackie are showing. Who Jackie, by the way, is also showing up for LGBTQ people this week, and is joined us in Washington to show up for the Respect for Marriage Act. So she is an ally in many ways, and someone who feels deeply. It's a lot of it is about empathy and compassion. I think that's like a really a valuable principle. Go on with gratitude.
I'm grateful to live in a democracy that is still alive. And with all of its challenges, with all of the suffering that we have experienced, with the rise of genuine totalitarians, with the rise of genuinely anti-democratic forces, Americans have made clear that they are grateful for democracy. And I am grateful not just for democracy, but for my fellow Americans. And I'm blessed to have relationships across a surprisingly large swath of the American political spectrum. And I am always heartened by the people who are in a very different political space than me, with whom I can still share some values. And so I am grateful for values-based conversations that are moving away from the tired tropes of politics, and that will enable us to figure out what we do share and how we can build together going forward. And I'm grateful for wonderful teachers, many of whom are Jewish, but increasingly many of whom are not Jewish. Paul, you have been a teacher and mentor for years. Dr. Ibu Patel, teacher and mentor for years. Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis, teacher and mentor for years. Rabbi Ben Spratt on the Upper West Side, one of the finest congregational rabbis in the country. himself the bearer of a remarkable faith journey with a dad who grew up Mormon and a mother who grew up Jewish, and navigating all of the aspects of identity in a beautiful way. And I feel like I
It's
am
is
privileged.
it, but I, you know, what I'm getting from you is like a surround sound gratitude, which is about like it's not just you know, I'm glad I have this really awesome house. You know, it's not, you know, I mean, and things, which things matter. It's fine. But also like a national perspective, an ally perspective, a sense of, a sense of, the teachers. I think that it helps us to think widely about what gratitude can be and how expansive it can be. It's almost like the longer you spend with gratitude, the more you can look around and say, "Oh, right, there's another area." So I just really appreciate the kind of the 360 you're giving, and I know it also goes very personal and close to you.
Yes, I just want to underline something that you said, which is gratitude as a practice. It's not a state of being, it's a practice. It's sometimes one of the more difficult practices for human beings. For us as clergy, when I come back from a funeral and a part of me is broken inside, it is hard to feel gratitude. And for people who are suffering in so many dimensions, it is hard. And what I love about the practice of it and the Jewish approach to it, it's hold all of the things, including gratitude. Don't have gratitude eclipse other emotions, have it in addition to them. And at home on a day-to-day basis, for those of us who are blessed to be parents, there is gratitude mixed in with beautiful moments of frustration and agita and sleep deprivation and too many details to hold, and a sense that you're dropping the ball somewhere, and the sense that you should have shown up differently, you could have done better, the self-doubt and all of it. And I'm blessed to have this beautiful, almost 4-year-old in my life as my child. And I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for all that he's teaching me. And we're in an interesting moment where he is navigating questions of gender in a way that I never did as a 4-year-old. And I'm grateful that it is something that he is able to imagine for himself in an open-ended way. And I'm so grateful that he is living in an age where he doesn't have to be just socialized into a gender. He is by sex gender. I default to male. And there are moments when he really identifies as female, and it changes on a day-to-day basis. And I am somebody who is sort of a cis, straight, Ashkenazi dude bro who does his best, but really does not know a lot about a lot, especially with regard to gender and LGBTQ rights. And I was talking to a colleague, and they said that the phenomenon is gender creative, that he's figuring it out, and that that's a beautiful thing. And I'm grateful that we live in a time where I don't have to tell him to be tough and tell him not to feel emotions and tell him that he's male, right or wrong, and tell him in very rigid ways what maleness is. I, for the life of me, could not put into words what it is to be a man. So how am I going to tell my 4-year-old what it is to be a male? And so I feel really blessed at home and totally
Well,
overwhelmed.
let me just like let's not like this is amazing, and it's so interesting because last week we had a wonderful woman, Reverend Garcia, who is a trans woman, ELCA pastor, and I think that you're being able to not shut this down, instead to look at what is evolving, to be there and love your child, answer questions as best you can, and to recognize that you're like any issue, we're all going to get some things wrong. When it comes to child rearing, we're going to get things wrong. fact. But that you're open to this. I'm going to say I'm grateful for you, and I'm so thankful that you're trying, that you're open to it. It's like it's amazing, and so I want to say how grateful I am. Like, we're going to have a grateful fest here, but I just think this is amazing, and it's first, I do, as a Rabbi Dude Bro, which is my new name for you from here on in, is to really try to do your best and to realize that there are resources out there when the time comes. And so I just want to acknowledge how interesting it is to bring that amazing, to transform that from a challenge and a difficulty into an opportunity and a blessing. That is like that's like a mind that's a heart game, and I just really think it's beautiful.
Well, we were talking about teachers earlier, and for those of us blessed to have children, they are our greatest teachers. And for me, as somebody who is narrow in his understanding of so many things, to be able to sit with a 4-year-old who says, right now, I'm a princess because I want to play alone. And he associates it, I think, with Frozen and Elsa and some of those characters. And is saying it with a degree of confidence that, like, who am I to say, no, you're not a princess? Like, he's very confident. They are very confident. I don't even know what gender to ascribe. At that moment, she is very confident that she is a princess. And there are so many things to be worried about when it comes to parenting. And if my kid wants to describe herself, himself, themselves in a particular way at a particular moment, that's just not on my top 1,000 concerns. Like, concern number 1, be a good human being. Concern number 2, learn a lot of really important things. Concern number 3, find a meaningful path in life where you can contribute to society. Concern number 4, know that you are part of this incredible people called the Jewish people. Concern number 5, find your voice. Like, those are my really big concerns. And it's really nice to have concerns placed in a perspective. And the immediacy of it. When you're with a 4-year-old, who cares about 5 minutes from now? It's at this moment, this is what's going on. And it is so clarifying. And so what was an abstract conversation about gender, I really do feel grateful that it is being taught by somebody that I owe such a duty of care for and love tremendously. And in very specific moments feels one way, and in very specific moments feels another. Mm-hmm. And when you're, when the horizon chronologically is like 2 minutes, his entire life is within a particular realm. And male, female, princess, dancer, whatever it might be. And so why would I break that? I mean, there are moments when he thinks he's an airplane. Why would I be more concerned that he thinks he's a princess than an inanimate object? And so I'm grateful for the learning. I will say there are moments of panic, of emotion, of total confusion, of second guessing myself that emerge from the fluidity of gender expression by my kid. And so I think I'm also grateful to have a spouse who is much more sophisticated on this and much else. I think if I were navigating this as the Ashkenazi cis dude bro, straight dude bro that I am, I would be really lost. But I've got this great kid and I've got this great spouse. And so whatever is going on inside of me, I can I have good resources, not just, in public groups and not just in other fora, but right at home. And who knows? I have no idea how my kid is going to identify in 10 years. It's hard to know minute by minute. But right now, if he's trying to figure out if he's an airplane or a princess, I just don't feel the need to preference one very much.
Well, I think that's awesome. There's more still ahead on this week's show. Up next, more with Rabbi Joshua Stanton. And later, some of the faith voices that came to Washington earlier this month in support of the Respect for Marriage Act. If you miss any part of today's program, you can hear full episodes of State of Belief anytime on our website. You can also find links to topics we discussed this week, extended interviews and transcripts, and an archive of past shows, all at stateofbelief.com. You're listening to State of Belief Radio, made for such a time as this. For you, I'm just curious, you're the senior rabbi at East End Temple. You have so many opportunities. I'm curious how you imagine yourself growing in the next 20 years as you see the Jewish community transforming. What do you think is for you and for the Jewish community, where would you like to see things go in the coming decades?
I think I need to matter less and less, speaking very bluntly. We have become overly focused on clergy. We have become almost ecclesiastical in our notions of clergy as people who intercede. You can't do a baby naming. You can't do a bar bat b mitzvah. You can't do a wedding. You can't do anything. From the standpoint of Jewish tradition, clergy are teachers, clergy are thinkers, clergy are community organizers, clergy are public representatives of the Jewish community. That's it. Every single life cycle event can be done without clergy. And so we are moving into an era of empowerment. The time when it was great to be the sage on the stage has long since passed us by. And so I'm so excited to support, empower, and cultivate leaders at East End Temple and beyond. And I wonder openly whether those trends are also present in other religious communities. If that is what we are moving towards in an era that I would describe as an awakening, and not an awakening in the sense that we're going to see churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, humanist centers built on every corner, but an awakening in the sense of renewed interest in community that has higher purpose, is mission-driven, and brings out the best in us as people. And I would love to see religious and spiritual community be a place of leadership cultivation so that we have many more leaders in all parts of society doing so much more good in countless realms. If we can do that.
That's so interesting. We have not talked about that, and I find that fascinating. And I do think that, that is, well, certainly in my tradition, in the Baptist tradition, the idea of priesthood of all believers, this is, that's a Protestant idea, but
no, a nation of priests, that's Moses.
Yeah. So there you are. I mean, sure. Yeah. Like everything, we just lifted it from the Jews and said, look what we invented. But anyway, I will say, almost to be a Baptist clergy person is an oxymoron, because it's like everybody should have the right. I mean, to do the thing, and to recognize that everybody has the right, not only for their own spirituality, but also for their own, their own practice. And so I think that that's a really beautiful, a beautiful trend that I feel like in some ways you are maybe leading rather than following. So that's really, really great. I wonder, in as we wrap up, just maybe you could just say a few more things that when you look around the world that one that you find awesome, because we kind of skipped over that. Like, what's awesome to you? And I guess I'm looking for what right now, what is present for you as far as awesome, broken, and grateful.
the Jewish community and so many communities often overlook a miracle in our time, and that is Nostra Aetate and the Second Vatican Accords. What had been, in effect, if not in intention, one of the largest systematically anti-Semitic organizations in the world has become the largest philo-Semitic organization in the world. How blessed are we to have a pope whose partner in transition, the administration of the papacy, his transition partner was the chief rabbi of Argentina. In what world are we living? This is a miracle. Why is it that Jews, even with the rise in anti-Semitism, in Pew studies and Robert Putnam studies, are the most liked religious community in the US? I have to say the Catholic Church probably has played a pivotal role in that. Cardinals up and down the line in the United States, priests up and down the line have a love and respect and regard for their Jewish colleagues and friends that was unimaginable to my grandparents. We are living into a miracle, and it is such a significant transformation, such a Copernican shift that we often don't even pay attention to it. And so I just have to say, as a rabbi, I feel such gratitude to the Catholic Church. And I can't imagine 100 years ago, much less 1,000 years ago, many rabbis feeling grateful to anyone in the Catholic hierarchy, much less the institution of the Catholic Church as a whole. And it has done something extraordinary. And so, yes, there's really ugly history. The Crusades, awful for the Jews. The Inquisition, awful for the Jews. So many moments in Catholic Jewish history, really just a bloodbath with Jewish blood being spilled. How amazing is it that we are living in a fundamentally different time? I could not be more grateful. Whether a divine miracle or a miracle wrought by human beings, it is a miracle in the fullest sense that I understand miracles.
What about something that you are confronted with the brokenness of?
As a rabbi, I have never seen more widespread human suffering than during pandemic, and whether we're post-pandemic or peri-pandemic or mid-pandemic right now, a huge number of people are not okay. The rates of depression, the rates of suicidality, the rates of drug use, the rates of domestic violence, the rates of violence outside the home are like nothing I have encountered before. And I see people's brokenness, and correspondingly, I internalize some of the brokenness. I will be the first one to publicly say, one of the pandemic keepers in my life is an amazing psychiatrist and the blessing of antidepressants. I did so many funerals and felt suffering myself so much that I experienced brokenness within. And I cannot recommend more highly finding a good mental health professional for you, for everybody. All of us are due for a mental health checkup and probably a physical checkup. And a whole bunch of us are due for more intensive interventions. I certainly was one. I certainly am one. And I'm guessing the majority of us are too, given what I'm seeing and hearing, not just in my community, but far more widely.
Thank you for that word. I think that's just, that is so life-saving, and it's so important from a religious leader to acknowledge that and to recognize that we all need help when we need help, and we do not need to be ashamed to ask for it. We need to find ways to get it. And I just think that's just incredibly important, especially, again, coming from a religious leader where you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to have all the answers. You're supposed to be like, one with God. So what else could you want? And just to instead to demonstrate self-care is a way to care for your community. So I just really appreciate those words. And finally, final words. What's your top line gratitude moment?
I was going on a trip 2 weeks ago, and my kid almost got out one of the most beautiful thoughts, and then in typical 4-year-old speak, narrowly missed it. And he turns to me before I go. He gives me a big hug, says, "I love you, Daddy." And he says, "Daddy, when you're gone, I'll be thinking." And what he meant was, I'll be thinking of you, but it was, "Daddy, I'll be thinking." And I thought on so many levels, both what he was going for and what he actually said, it was just beautiful. And it was one of those moments where you're like, my kid must have been thinking for a really long time about exactly what to say. And even though it was halfway to a fully formed expression of it, it was the most beautiful thing I could have imagined.
That's wonderful. Can you could we close out with some kind of a gratitude blessing from the Jewish tradition, either sung or spoken?
Yes. Hakarat hatov is the practice of recognizing the good that others bring into the world and into our midst. It is a practice of seeing other people more fully. It is the blessing of feeling their goodness in our lives. It is the possibility of experiencing awe in more moments. It is the opportunity to see the goodness within ourselves too. May we go around our day-to-day lives, not missing a moment to express gratitude and to feel gratitude within, not just for the big moments, the grand moments, but for the Nisim B'chol Yom, the miracles of everyday life that adorn our lives and are one of its greatest forms of blessing. Amen.
Joshua Stanton, Rabbi of East End Temple in Manhattan and a senior fellow at Clow. He's co-author of the powerful book, Awakenings, American Jewish Transformation, Identity, Leadership, and Belonging. Joshua, thank you for being with us on this Thanksgiving edition, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
In coalition with a diverse set of partners, Interfaith Alliance brought faith leaders from across the nation to Washington, D.C. earlier this month to visit Senate offices and urge passage of the Respect for Marriage Act.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Dent, president of the Center for Faith, Justice, and Reconciliation. And I support the Respect for Marriage Act because every human being is worthy of dignity and respect. As we're encouraged by our faith traditions to love one another, we should also respect one another. And every marriage and every family should be protected in this country. And so it's for that reason that I've asked my senator to support this, the Respect for Marriage Equality Act, and I ask you to do the same.
My name is Reverend Don Abram, and I am the founder and executive director of Pride in the Pews. I'm elated to be with the Interfaith Alliance to really show our support for the Respect for Marriage Act. It is incredibly important that people of faith, particularly Black people of faith, show that we are in support of equal protections under the law. We should refute and reject any notion which suggests that some marriages are worthy of protection and equal rights and other marriages are not. So I'm just thrilled to be able to lend my voice to this incredibly important fight.
I'm Maggie Garrett, and I'm with Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Oftentimes, anti-LGBTQ discrimination is cloaked in the language of religion, but actually true religious liberty and marriage equality are compatible. In fact, real religious freedom leads us to marriage equality. And that is why I applaud the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act.
My name is Simran Stobnagel. I'm the Global Affairs Advisor for SeekNet and the Treasurer for the Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. My daughter's ancestors came here on the Mayflower, and as a Sikh American, I want them to know that their right to self-determination and to choose who they love is not only sacred, but is protected by the law and our government every day of their lives.
So I'm Reverend Jason Carson Wilson, the founding executive director of the Baird Rest and Liberation Initiative and a United Church of Christ minister. And I support the Respect for Marriage Act because I believe that everyone not only has the right to love who they love, but to celebrate that love in holy matrimony and to protect that love and that union legally. Religion should no longer be used as a weapon to hurt LGBTQ people and denying them protections for their unions hurts families and puts them in jeopardy. I have friends who are a lesbian couple who have a beautiful daughter, and their union and their family is just as worthy of respect as any other family. And I believe that this legislation, the Respect for Marriage Act, ensures that everyone will be treated with dignity, respect, and humanity.
Satna Pandya is a queer Hindu Pandita.
Good morning, everyone. Namaskar. Assalamu alaikum. Sat Sri Akal. Shalom. It's an incredible honor to be here today to share the podium with these esteemed speakers and to be representing a Hindu voice in strong, absolute support for the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act. Yeah. I'm here today in my capacity as a Pandita, a Hindu officiant that 10 years ago began offering my services of presiding over same-sex, interfaith, interracial, and intercaste marriages rooted in Hindu tradition. I have married gay and lesbian Hindus, Jews, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and more, and their marriages deserve the protection of the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act. I'm also here in my capacity as a queer Hindu woman, born in DC to Indian immigrant parents, married to a Muslim woman who immigrated to DC from Pakistan. I came out to my family, first to my little sister over 20 years ago, just about 10 blocks from where we're standing right now. Never would the young woman then have imagined that I could be here on the precipice of the United States Senate advancing legislation to protect same-sex marriages and interfaith marriages. I know that the Pew Research polls show that almost 70% of Hindus are in support of same-sex marriage. But honestly, more important than that, I personally have felt and lived that support. My Hindu family, as well as my Muslim in-laws, are religious, faith-abiding individuals. And it is their faith, indeed, that gives them the scaffolding to affirm us, to love us, to see our inherent dignity and worth as reflections of the divine. Yes. I know my wife and I may be among the lucky ones, but when the Marriage Equality Act was passed in DC in 2010, we rushed to the mandap, or the Muslim marriage altar, to get married. And that marked an incredible shift in my family and my extended community's reception of our relationship. We must not underestimate the extent to which legislation, like the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act, or indeed the decriminalizing of homosexuality as ruled finally by the Indian Supreme Court in 2018, has the potential to change hearts, minds, and therefore lives. When my family and community knew that mine and my wife's marriage was sanctioned by law, that provided greater freedom and safety for them to express their contentment at our union. Their contentment and embrace provides us stability and strength, and that embrace now extends to our 4-year-old Hindu-Muslim child. Indeed, the most amazing blessing they are, mashallah. While there is no central body or belief system of Hinduism, For my own study of Hindu theology, I graduated with a Bachelor's of Religious Studies from GW University right here in DC as well. I can affirm that our scripture does state that every human being is created with an aspect of the divine. Yes. Every person, that includes LGBTQ people. Yes. The Ishavasya Upanishad includes a verse which translates to, "He who sees all beings in the self, capital S self, and the capital S self in all beings, feels no hatred by virtue of that wisdom." Yes. In my closing remarks, I would be remiss if I did not say that as Hindu society, we must always endeavor to even go beyond the law and expand the ideals of all people deserving a life lived with dignity and choice. Let us use our love for the divine to assert and see that divine in all. As we look with hope towards the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act, we cannot have a contradiction in social and economic lived realities. Indeed, as Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had warned in 1950, in politics we will have equality, and in social and economic life we may have inequality. While he was referring to caste discrimination, a parallel can be made here. As Hindu society, we must continue to extend love, not hatred or discrimination, to LGBTQ communities of all faiths and backgrounds, to LGBTQ Muslims, to LGBTQ Dalits of all faith backgrounds, to LGBTQ Christians, Jews, Sikhs, and beyond. People of faith have the power and responsibility to join in solidarity with the LGBTQ community. In doing so, we can continue the sacred work of justice, compassion, and love. Thank you so much.
And in closing, I'd like to offer you this prayer by Reverend Nicole Garcia, who's the director of Faith Works at the LGBTQ Task Force in Washington, D.C.
Creator Spirit, your sun shines upon the world that you created. We, the people of your creation, need your love. We need your guidance. We need you to appear in our lives so that we can realize that you have provided a glorious bounty for us all. Let us realize and recognize that we can have all we need by sharing with what we have with all those around us. Open our hearts, open our minds, and fill us with your love so that we can reach out to the widow and the orphan and provide to all those who need that which you bestowed upon us. I ask this through your generous blessing and generous love. Amen.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this week's show. We need your help keeping this show on the air, and I hope you will consider being a partner in this crucial work by making a financial contribution today. Information on how to donate is available at stateofbelief.com. That's stateofbelief.com. And you can also be a part of making sure informative and encouraging voices like these are heard by sharing this program with family and friends. Let's get more people listening and more people taking part in these conversations both on and off the air. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the weekly State of Belief podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And join the conversation. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at State of Belief and share State of Belief with the people in your life. State of Belief is produced by Ray Kirstein and is a production of Interfaith Alliance. Become a member today at interfaithalliance.org. And be sure to join us next week. Until then, I'm Paul Rauschenbusch, and this is State of Belief.
I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.